Alrighty, as we are moving on to section 8.5, we are moving past multiplying and dividing rational expressions like we did in 8.4, and now we are adding and subtracting them. So before we move on, let's take a brief moment to refresh our memories on how we add or subtract fractions, because that's exactly what we're doing today, just with rational expressions. And it's going to seem silly and we're going to take a lot of time to go through these examples, but I'm doing it for the sake of, hey, things we can apply here, we're going to be able to apply in a little bit. So in example A, as we add and simplify, so we look for first our common denominator, our least common denominator. Our denominators right now are 2 and 3. They share no common factors, so our LCD is just going to be 6, right? Which often we can find by just multiplying our two denominators together. So 2 times 3, we get 6. Our first fraction, our denominator is 2, we're missing the 3. So we multiply top and bottom by 3, we get 3 over 6. And in our second fraction, our denominator is 3, so we're missing the 2. So we multiply by 2 on top and bottom. We get 4 over 6. Once you have your common denominator, you just add across the top. So 3 plus 4, I have 7, 6. So, in example A, notice your LCD we found by just multiplying the 2 together. In example B, though, our LCD would not be 32, which we would get by multiplying 8 and 4, because 8 can be split into 4 times 2. So, if we want our denominator, our LCD, to be 8, all we have to do is multiply our second fraction by 2. And then both of our denominators are 4 times 2, or 8. So, our first fraction remains 7/8 plus our second fraction becomes 2/8. 7/8 plus 2/8, 9/8. And example C, now before we take a look and pause for a moment about what our LCD would be this time, let's look at our second fraction. We have 3 over 9. Sometimes it's in our best interest to reduce before we add our fractions, because sometimes you can get your common denominator just by doing that. Now in this case we didn't, so we still have to multiply our LCD. If we want it to be 6, we have to multiply our second fraction by 2 on top, 2 on bottom. And then again, our first fraction stays the same, and then I've got plus 2, 6, so I have 7, 6. And in example D, our denominators this time around are 7 and 11. They share no common factors, so this time, yes, our LCD could be 77, but we can also zip, zap, zoom, and let's refresh our memories on that. Zip, zap, zoom works really well when our denominators share no similar factors, no common factors. So when we zip, we multiply one diagonal and we get 11. We zap, we get a positive 28. And when we zoom, we multiply across our denominator, and we still get 77 for our denominator both times around, but we just did it in a slightly more fun fashion. And we end at 39 over 77. So, if we take a look at these 4 examples and how each one's different, we notice in example A, we multiplied our 2 denominators together and found what we were missing from each fraction, right? So our denominator is 6. In our first one, we had 2 multiplied by 3, and in our second fraction, we had 3 multiplied by 2. In example B, we only had to multiply one fraction by something in order to get our LCD. In example C, we reduced one fraction first, then multiplied it to get our LCD. And in our last example, we just said, you know what, let's just zip, zap, zoom. So we are going to be coming back to those practices as we move on from here.